Today we are here to unveil markers for the students wounded on May 4th, 1970. These markers represent the latest addition to the National Historic Landmark Site and provide greater insight to the events that happened on May 4th, 1970.
Only two of us were facing the direction of the guardsmen when the bullets hit us. So we're talking about 11 people struck in the back or the side who weren't even looking the way the guardsmen were shooting from. I have personally forgiven these two men for shooting me, not so much for their good, but for my own. But I don't forgive them for killing 4 students who died that day. That's not my place.
At the time, I was going to class, and so I was basically at the wrong place at the wrong time. I was an innocent bystander. After the shootings, there were so many stories that came out in the paper, so many exaggerations. I think it's important that you listen to those people that were there, that were eyewitnesses, because I think they give you a more objective viewpoint than very often what you read.
I myself was about 150, 160 feet away. I heard 1 or 2 cracks. I'm not sure if they were from a 45 or M1 fire. I started to run. I didn't get more than a step or two, and the bullet entered my left heel and knocked me on the ground. That may have actually saved my life. I was taken to the ambulance, or taken to the hospital in an ambulance with Sandy Scheuer. She died right next to me in the ambulance. That's something I'll never forget.
On May 4th, I was an observer. I wasn't part of the group of kids down front. So I saw the National Guard moving the kids up and down the hillside. Once I was shot, I had no idea what was going on, and I was whisked off to the hospital.
I think real healing can only come with the truth. And that's why months ago, the mothers of the victims here, the mothers of our martyrs, made an appeal to the National Guardsmen. Come forward and finally tell who gave the order to shoot at Kent State. And I think once we have that information, that's when the healing process will really take place.
As a wounded student, I feel no bitterness. Only forgiveness is in my heart. To quote a newsman, Morley Safer, he said the other day, "Bitterness is the prerogative of a loser. Those of us who were shot were not losers."
And then I was quite a ways away, and there were at least 500 people between me and the guard. And I was walking away because it didn't look like it was going to get good. And I didn't especially want anything to happen to me, so the guard and myself. And somehow I managed to get shot.
It's not going to be anything that comes from a Freedom of Information request or from a document that gets discovered that's going to shed any additional light on the events of May 4th. It's going to be oral testimony from an individual guard or from a group of guard or former guard who decide to come forth and tell their story. But we're either going to get the truth about this or not get the truth, based upon what a handful of guard do or do not decide to say from this date on.
Locations, these markers, connect us to Kent State's most important day and its worst 13 seconds.
These markers really kind of bring a sense of reality as to where these people were when they were shot.
I do think it's very important to have the markers for the benefit of people who come after the fact, who can see the distances involved, and to put to rest the lie that the guardsmen on the hill that day used, which was that they were afraid for their lives, and so they had to shoot people to save their lives.
We can see too how the gymnasium annex that people like Alan Kent Ford tried to stop the construction of in 1977 enveloped the location where Jim Russell was struck by separate shotgun blasts. And we can find the spot on what remains of the practice football field where former athlete Dean Kaler was left paralyzed by an M1 round to his back.
So I think telling the story and understanding the scope of the distances from the so-called threats that the guardsmen perceived from people who were so far away and unarmed and unprepared for even a fight, let alone a battle. I think that for that reason, the markers are very significant and important for understanding the story of the Kent State shootings that day.
I think the other thing that these markers do is add a little bit of human element to it by putting a name to these people and where they were when they were shot.
Marking the locations will help not only to preserve the history of that vitally important day, but also to evoke a sense of place so people can visit there and try to imagine the horror of those moments.